Welcome to Kings of Kimuras, your one-stop podcast for everything from mats to the stars. Join us as we dive into the heart of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, explore the thrills of MMA, and groove to the beats of music. But that's not all. We're also venturing into the unknown, discussing aliens and the mysteries of the cosmos. And of course, we'll be shooting the breeze, sharing stories, and laughs along the way. Get ready for a wild ride from a universe of topics. Strap in and prepare to explore the world of BJJ, MMA, music, aliens, and more. Let's roll.
Episode 2 of the Kings of Kimuras podcast.
What's up?
So we've actually tried to do this episode 2 a couple of times already. And both times I somehow managed to screw up the recording.
Yeah.
So today we are recording. We got it set up in front of us, a lot easier to see. So we were talking about a lot of stuff in jiu-jitsu, obviously. But we kind of we tried to go over the Europeans. And since then, it's already taken place. It was like a long tournament. You know, it was like a 7-day tournament or something like that. Black belts just went for the first time this morning.
Yep. First round of black belt matches were this morning.
So the guy we were talking about earlier, you know, this kind of brings it to our conversation of, does the gi help you get better in no gi? Is Elijah Dorsey.
Elijah Dorsey, yeah. He just won West Coast Trials, a no-gi tournament, obviously. And now he's doing gi Europeans, and he's on to the quarterfinals. He's qualified for tomorrow. Honestly, I knew him more as a gi guy. You know, I saw him compete a lot in the gi. And to see him in his first ever trials, like the first time I had ever seen him do a no-gi tournament, he goes out and wins it. I think that just is a testament to, if you know how jiu-jitsu works, it doesn't matter if you have the gi or no-gi, you should be able to apply what you know and find ways to win matches. You know, I think if you do a lot of no-gi and then you put on a gi again, you obviously are going to do more no-gi things. But if you kind of understand, you know, the way the body works, mechanics, wedges, all that, the gi just kind of helps you out, you know?
Yeah, I think the biggest complaint that people have, though, about doing the gi is the grips and obviously, like, the lack of leg locks, you know?
Yeah,
which I think it's, me personally, I think it's good to understand both because you at least want to be proficient in both. Both are grappling, you know? Like, obviously, I think that being a gym owner, it's important to be able to do both. You know, you don't have to be an expert in either one, but to be able to do both is, you know, important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at least knowing how like some of the more tricky things in the gi work, you know, like lasso and like worm guard. I know for me, when I was trying to compete more in the gi as a purple belt, blue belt, always the most annoying thing for me was clearing lasso and clearing lapel guards and pants grips as well. Like those were kind of like the main things that I struggled with. And honestly, doing a lot more no-gi, I think I would approach getting rid of those grips a little bit different than what I was doing before. Like with the worm grip, once they weave that leg inside the lapel, it's like super hard to get out of and just break the grip. You almost have to like step your leg up and out and then just kind of like have their leg inside your lapel and pass like that.
Yeah, it's like when we're training no-gi, you don't let somebody hold onto your head, but the guys in the gi kind of get used to allowing a guy have one hand in the collar, I feel like in no-gi, if you let somebody hang on your head, they're going to put a lot of weight on you.
Absolutely.
In the gi, you can kind of not worry about that so much, but you have to worry about that secondary hand, is it going to come in for the cross-collar choke or whatever. But if you use that mindset of, if somebody makes a grip, I just break it or I remove it, both of those work well in gi or no gi. And that's how you shut down any of those lapel guards or, any type of guard that is going to tie you up where you can't move. And that's the whole point of any of those lapel positions.
Boom. Just get off of me, dude, please.
So, obviously we both kind of agree on that, training in the gi is good. I've been training now for 15 years, and the way that my jiu-jitsu started was training no-gi first, and then I got involved in the gi. And then the more I trained in the gi, the more I wanted to go back to no-gi.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Still, I would say I'm probably 90-10 on the amount of time that I train no-gi to gi. But there's still some times that I train it, and I feel like it's really good to kind of slow things down and have an understanding of, positional control instead of that steady flow that happens a lot of times in no-gi.
Yeah, absolutely. You can really focus on your base and your pressure in the gi. A prime example obviously is Lucas Lepre.
Yeah.
And he's aggressive, but he's very precise. And that's his whole, thing with his jiu-jitsu is how precise he is with every movement.
Yeah.
And he's carried that same precision over to no-gi as well. He beat Lachlan Giles pretty good. I think it was 2019 ADCC. He pretty much dominated the whole match. It's a pretty bad style.
Was it 2019? I didn't even think he was in the
Lachlan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Lachlan was in 2019 because that's when he won the bronze medal.
Yeah, Lucas Lepre was in that one. I'm pretty sure.
But he didn't podium. I'm sure.
I think he lost to Dante, and then he lost the bronze medal match. I want to say. I'm not exactly sure, but no, he handled Lachlan pretty well just because
he shut down the leg entanglements, right?
Yeah.
Control the hips. And that's how you shut down any of those guys that are really good at leg locking.
Yeah.
Don't ever take your hands off their feet until you get behind them where you can choke them.
Yeah. Give me your back, dude.
Looks like Mika made it through to the second day as well. No surprise. He's going to fight Tariq on day 2. That's pretty exciting matchup there.
Yeah, we'll see what strategy Tarek comes in with. Because the thing with a guy like Mika is what do you try on him exactly? Do you just try and you basically just have to play your A game, the game that you would play against anybody of that skill level.
Yeah.
You can't really change it up too much, but I think some of these guys have to be realistic that their style doesn't match up well with a style like Mika, where he can pretty much do everything to an extremely high level.
Yeah.
Can pass, he can play guard, he can wrestle. Now his girlfriend she's a legit she's won
wrestler,
literally everything, and she's not even. I think she just turned 20.
Yeah.
What? And she's already a multiple-time world champ. So he's definitely learning a lot of wrestling from her. And
I wonder though if how does the testing, because we all know Mika got popped over a year ago, right? This is his first major event back in IBJJF. Do they test in Europe? Is USADA only in North America?
Yeah, I think
maybe
so.
Is that why he's doing these tournaments outside of the
Yeah,
U.S.?
perhaps.
I guess if we see June, July, when it comes around for Worlds, is he going to be competing?
Right, yeah, because that's how he
not?
got popped last time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is it even worth it? Probably not, because it's ADCC.
Sure, it's not too far after that. Yeah.
But you never, I mean, if you're on steroids, man, why not do both? Right?
Unless you get popped,
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, now
Back
you're
to
banned.
super fights and nogi,
Yeah.
and like it doesn't.
But when you're a guy that level and you get popped, that's what happens, right? You just go onto the super fight circuit, and now you actually make money because IBJF does not pay.
So like Kainan Duarte is a prime example. He literally, I saw a comment he made under like once somebody posted about him and like, oh, this guy popped for steroids, blah blah blah. He made almost like a sarcastic comment and was like, oh no, I guess my career's over now. Like, it doesn't even matter. These guys pop, they get banned for a year, they come back like nothing ever happened.
Right. Yeah. And there's no, it's not like at the end of your 1 year, now they're going to test you and determine, did you stay off steroids for that entire year? No, nobody's going to do that.
No.
If you're already doing it and you're training as much as these guys, that's the whole reason they're doing it. It just allows them to train harder and for longer and not have to rest as much, right? Your body can recover faster. I just wonder though, you see a lot of guys, and we've known guys in the sport that started that stuff super young, 16, 17 years old.
Yeah, like teenagers.
And then ended up having, severe problems where they couldn't have children or they had to have some kind of surgery to remove tumors. What are they doing it under regulations of a doctor, or
yeah.
are they just kind of like, I know in Brazil you can literally walk up to a pharmacy and get pretty much anything that you want.
Yeah, for sure.
So how are they doing that? What are the long-term effects? Nobody will know until it happens to them. But there is no, you're not going to find a human-based study where they did, over the last 30 years, they checked out somebody, they gave them steroids and,
yeah,
these are all the benefits and these are all the negatives. Kind of like,
for sure,
just guys that have tested on themselves,
Yeah, that's like the only kind of thing they have to go off of. And it's like Reddit is, you see Reddit stories all the time of people who have taken like tren, like some of the really high end, like the really strong and like serious stuff. And they tell like paranoia. They thought their girlfriend was cheating on them. They thought people on the road were going to like intentionally hit their car and try to kill them. Like night sweats, can't sleep. So it's like so many people have reported that stuff. So it's like pretty much a no-brainer. You stay away from this drug here.
Yeah.
Because pretty much everybody says the same thing. It makes you like a crazy person, but you get tremendous gains. So it's like, do you want to look jacked but be like mentally
Yeah,
like,
I knew a guy, back in,
wrecked?
I would say my late teens, that he was playing football for a junior college. And when I knew him prior to him getting on stuff, he was like a tall, skinny guy. And then I saw him like 6 months later and he had put on like probably 30, 40 pounds of muscle in a super short amount of time. And he was insane. Like, you could not have a conversation with this guy. He was paranoid. He thought everybody was against him. It was like, I had no idea what he was doing other than maybe some testosterone, because, we're talking like 20 years ago. So,
Right.
it wasn't like, I'm sure the knowledge was out there. I didn't have the knowledge like I have now, just from working with different companies like, Waste to Well, or like Dr. Mark's company in Irving, which I don't remember the name of. But that stuff, it can be dangerous. But I think if you're doing it under, constant checks of blood work and,
if you do it the safest way possible, yeah, absolutely. Like you can get a good boost from it.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't take all the danger out of it. But then like, driving a car is dangerous.
Right.
Like,
anything that you're going to do is going to be
there's
risky.
always risk versus reward.
And I think if you take every precaution to mitigate that risk, then it can kind of like ease your mind. But there is always that chance, like some guys, they get on and they just instantly lose their hair. Well, didn't expect that, but I guess I'm going to have to just be bald now.
Yeah. I mean, that's not what happened to me and why I lost my hair, but definitely, I've seen a lot of guys that get on it and you notice like, oh man, your upper body is like jacked. And then you see their legs and you're like, oh, it makes sense. And then you see the hair and, it's like it's never like the widow's peak. It's always like the spot on top. You know?
Yeah,
like,
the back of the starts to go.
That's
here.
like the dead giveaway. That's where it comes out first. So
yeah, for sure. And then you end up looking like a butler.
yeah,
Then it's time for it to go.
Yeah.
We can't be having nothing on top and stuff on the sides and the back. That's just looking like a butler.
I mean, I think I'm either that or you look like Hulk Hogan, depending on, you know, if you grow it out long enough and you wear a bandana, you either look like Hulk Hogan or
and
that
you're
guy,
taking enough steroids.
Brett Michaels from Poison. You know?
Yeah.
Those are the two guys you can look like. And honestly, both of those guys, you never knew that they were bald until the bandana came off. And then it's like, oh, fuck, you're really bald. You know?
It's bad. Like, it's really bad. That bandana has been saving you for years.
So how do you think people should approach their training? You think it's like the way that I try to tell people about training is always like goal oriented, you know?
Absolutely.
Instead of like just showing up and just training and like, you know, I used to treat tournaments like that in the early days because I didn't have any coach.
Right.
And I'm talking like early days. Naga would be like the only thing or like a local tournament. And I would show up and somebody would go, "What's your game plan?" I have no clue, man.
Jiu-Jitsu is my game plan.
And I would lose over and over again because I didn't have like a series of moves because my training wasn't based that way. You know, nobody was like telling me this stuff. And then the longer you spend in training, you're like, oh, I need to be like setting goals so I don't get burnt out for this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when I first started jiu-jitsu, my goal was the goal of like a competition. You want to submit your opponent. You want to get a tap. So I was like, okay, well, that's a good goal to try to attain. But the way I was going about attaining it was like, I wouldn't say all wrong, but it was definitely like not the best way to approach training. And, you know, this is 2011, 2012 maybe. So people were starting to like kind of figure it out, but still, like, I didn't know how to really train properly. I just knew I need to get a submission.
Yeah.
So I kind of figured out like things that I liked in my game, but I feel like I plateaued a lot when I got my yellow belt because the stuff that I was doing wasn't working anymore. And I had to like then come up with other things that I like to do. And then, yeah, once I started to kind of do that, I switched back over to wrestling. And then I was wrestling for a few years, not really doing much jiu-jitsu. But now my training's a lot different. Situational is definitely a must because it gives you a certain goal and you start in a certain position you might not end up in a whole lot, like bottom mount, bottom side control, on the back, body triangle, like tough positions. Yeah. And but yeah, absolutely being goal driven and oriented is gonna be better than just coming in for an open mat and getting rolls. You're not going to get much better.
I know
like
for
that.
me, when I used to go do the pro training years ago, you know, with our team, I would go in there and guys were like always way better than me because they'd been training like their entire life. I started jiu-jitsu relatively late in my late 20s, but these guys had all started when they were like 9 years old, you know, and now they're like the same age as me, you know? So I had to figure out a way to learn faster, and I don't think that instructionals are always the best way to learn faster. You know, like obviously competing is a great way to learn, but if you can put yourself in hard training with people that are better than you and pick up on moves that they're doing and then like get tapped or reset the position and then try to do that move to the person and see how they react to it. And you take that direct lesson you learn there. So the next time they're doing it to you, you know how to counter, or at least how they would counter that particular move.
For sure,
you know?
yeah.
It's a good way to pick up skills fast instead of like getting tapped out 15 times by the same thing. You know?
Yeah. You have to like understand how the attack works so you can sharpen up your defense.
Yeah.
And then once your defense gets sharp enough, you can start countering, and then you can start just completely shutting down their game at a certain point, right? That's like the mark, I think, of a good black belt is how well can they shut down your game and employ their own game plan.
Yeah.
Now, some Black belts, their game plan is to shut down your game, and that's it. They're not trying to submit you. They're not trying to really score points. They're just trying to shut your game down.
And that's a skill, but I feel like that's a skill that like any person can obtain fast, right?
Yeah,
if you
absolutely.
have size and you have athletic ability, you do maybe like a week of classes. I bet you could shut like a guy that's higher ranked than you but smaller than you. I bet you could shut their game completely down.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
But in order to like counter that, you have to pick up skills. You have to be able to, like you said, implement your game. And that's sometimes what those people miss out on, that their only goal is to just shut down somebody else's game.
Yeah, like that anti-jitsu, that term gets thrown around a lot, I know, but that's, I think, the true anti-jitsu is just completely shut down the other person's game and don't fight for the submission. You can shut down somebody's game and then systematically go to side control, to mount, take the back. Like, all those things are available to you, but a lot of these people just neglect that. And they're just like, I'm cool with just shutting people's game down and not letting them submit me. I'm cool with that. Yeah. And I'm just like, no, I think there's more to it. And I think you're hindering your own growth, even as a black belt. Like, if you're not constantly trying to learn, black belts who, maybe right now are purple belts, but then by the time they get their black belt, they're like on a totally different level than the black belts who have been black belts for 15 years.
Yeah, and sometimes you can get stuck in that rut where you're not learning anything new because the people you're training with are, you're catching them and all the stuff. But I feel like as an instructor, if I notice that I'm catching everybody in like a particular move, the next thing that I'm teaching is how to shut all that down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
because
for sure.
It's cool to like be able to do that and hit a move on anybody, but the real objective here is like teaching people how to be better than you. And I think the only way to make yourself better is teach everybody how to stop your game.
Right, because it's like sometimes it's a compliment when people tell me like, man, I did not even know what just happened. Like, what did you just do? Because it's like, it feels good. It's a good little ego booster. But then I'm like, okay, let me show you how you're going to avoid this. And some of the moves you can avoid by just doing one thing correctly.
Yeah.
And it like completely shuts down the move or the setup to the move.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I show them that, they're like, oh, okay. And so it's not as easy to do those things on them the next time. And then, of course, you chain it all together. That's when the real chess game starts. Try to get a few steps ahead and then just maintain that lead. They try to move, you're just always at least one step ahead.
Yeah.
Ideally a few more, but always stay ahead.
Yeah, and that's something you said there, like the one step ahead. Something I used to hear when I was beginning was, oh, you want to be 3 or 4 steps ahead. And like, if you're that far ahead of the guy, that means
there's
like
a big
you already
skill
tapped
gap.
him, right?
Yeah.
So like you said, one step ahead is really all you need. That's enough space to be able to hit the submission or hit the positional control that you're looking for.
Absolutely.
So something that you wanted to talk about here was this donkey guard controversy.
Oh, yeah.
What is the controversy there? Obviously, it's like a position that people don't think is real, but it is.
Yeah, so, I mean, really the controversial part is just like any other. So, like, Abe, who actually used to train around here, Abraham LaMontagne. Honestly, he has a sick name, but he like started doing donkey guard on guys and hitting them with this toe hold, and he's done it to some high level guys like Miha from Legion.
That's just one of those moves.
He tried it on Wagner. He almost got it on Wagner.
In it if you don't know what's happening.
Yeah, and I think like the people who wrestled deal with that position better, because what I started doing was sitting out and getting my hips and my head up higher. So I also watched a video on Flow of Gordon and Abe rolling, and that was Gordon's game plan. Get his hips and head up real high. Mm-hmm. So basically you have to work to control the hips, and the feet aren't available.
Right? A lot heavier on his feet. Yeah.
And basically like, you pretty much turn them upside down, and Abe was trying to kind of collect his ankles and knock him off balance. But Gordon was just so upright with his positioning and his posture that it's like once he gets there, he's very difficult to off balance.
You know, somebody that when I would train with him a lot that would put me in that position was always JB. Like he would end up in that. You're like facing the mat, but you're locked in close guard, and he's on his knees facing the other way.
Yeah.
And the way that he would always deal with it is he would just spin around and then sprawl to break your guard, and then he's on your back. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And like wrestlers, that's because sometimes you'll take a shot and you'll come out the back door, like a double leg where your head's in the middle of their legs, and you kind of end up in that same style of position, but then it just becomes a scramble where let's see who can get their hips and their head up higher and then start to separate the feet, turn back inside, and then get the back or just get top position.
Yeah, I feel like it would always end up there when he would do the ankle pass. He would like pass his guard into side control, and then he would pass your ankle, and you would try to lock a guard, you know, from behind.
Yeah.
Not understanding what you needed to really do in that position, but, you know, in the beginning stages, like I would get caught there, and then he would be on my back, and like, damn, how did this happen?
Yeah.
But then you start to understand the position, like you're saying, if you're heavier on your weight there, right? Your spine is straight, your hips are above your ankles, your knees are bent solid. It's going to be really hard to collect your legs to off balance you, and that's where that attack happens. Is
yeah, absolutely. And like, and then guys will try to, so they'll get knocked to their hips, so they'll be sat on their butt, and then what'll happen is they'll try to spin over to try to get height, but then as they spin over, they don't get heavy enough on their legs and posture up enough. So they basically just end up spinning over with their legs extended, and then they get toe holded. And then they try to roll through again, but then you just put yourself back on your hips. So it's a pretty tricky position. I know Owen Jones, really the controversy with that is like Abe was saying like, well, this is kind of like my technique. I kind of made this popular, blah, blah, blah. And then Craig Jones was just taking the piss out of him, basically, and like roasting him and like saying like, how can you say it's your move, blah, blah, blah. No one knows who you are. John Danaher won't even let you like say that you're his student on his like seminar posters, just going crazy, like just like Craig does, you know. But I mean, it's definitely a position that works well, but again, so many, like the Mikey lock is another one. Like people get so caught up.
Let's save that Mikey lock for right after a break. We're going to take a break real quick and we'll come back.
Hi guys, Tony Trammell with Corporal Martial Arts. I want to let you guys know that we have a new gym opening up in downtown Plano. We're estimating that date is going to be a little bit before March 1st, but March 1st we are going to have a seminar with Justin J. Flo Flores. If you guys don't know who he is a 2020 judo coach for the Olympic team. He coached athletes like Ronda Rousey in the UFC. He's a D1 wrestler, and he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So wide variety of skills. You guys don't want to miss this. Make sure you go to corvoma.com to get signed up and save money, because those prices are going to increase and the spots are limited. So make sure you get in on that deal. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys, we're back from the break.
We are back.
So we were talking about the Mikey lock and the controversy there. You know, obviously there's been like a lot of guys that have kind of made that same move. I want to say like Eric Paulson's probably the first guy that I ever heard of doing that particular lock, you know, using the side of the face and the neck. And who's to say that, you know, prior to that, I mean, there's no telling who the first guy that made that up. I think it's like anything, you know, there's people on, say, thinking on that same wavelength. How many times have you heard of some guy inventing something and then some guy on the other side of the earth, like around the same time, invent the same thing? You know, whether
absolutely.
It's like a device, a tool, or food, or, you know, you name it, jiu-jitsu technique. I mean, it's just the way that it is, honestly. Like, it's a good chance somebody else is doing very similar to what you're doing at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, yeah, I mean, I've like done some moves like the like duck under that I do. I think is kind of unique, like where I change levels on both. Like I don't hit a knee. Like I just sit to my butt or sit to my heels basically, and I just pop up behind him. Like I think that's a unique way to do a duck under.
Yeah.
But I don't think my ego is big enough for me to call it like oh, let's
your
call it the
move.
Ramos duck under. Like,
Yeah.
bro, come on, dude.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to do. Obviously, if you're trying to brand yourself, you're trying to sell DVDs or downloads, and that's honestly what most of those guys are doing, right? They're like rebranding somebody else's stuff into their
I
own.
do that all the time, man.
I mean,
It's
yeah.
the best stuff is out there.
Well, look at how many guys at the highest level. I won't name any names, but there's an instructor that will release a DVD. It'll be named one thing, and then his top student releases something like identical to it right after that with a different name.
yeah.
And it's what they're doing, man. This is like the reality of it. This is big business. People are making 6-7 figures a year off of downloads.
Instructionals. Yeah, absolutely.
And they're winning. These guys are at the top level. They're winning, so people want to learn their techniques. But I think it's you can learn the techniques, but applying them the same way that somebody that's naturally talented or obviously works very hard too is something completely different.
Absolutely.
Some like dad with 3 kids that trains 2 or 3 times a week. It doesn't matter how many thousands of dollars you spend on instructionals. If you're not training 7 days a week, twice a day, using Mexican supplements, you're probably not going to be as good as somebody that is doing all that. That's just the reality of it. And
yeah, absolutely.
You have to be okay with that.
Yeah, most definitely. And it's like we were talking about before with the goals thing, I know I have certain goals and aspirations and things like that. And I know that somebody else who comes in who, like you said, might have a life outside of jiu-jitsu. They have another job. They might have like a really tedious job too, like being a doctor or a nurse or something like that. And they come in and train. They're obviously going to have very different goals than somebody like me who has a lot of time to train and get ready for tournaments and also teach as well. Like that's a big part of being a professional jiu-jitsu athlete, I think, is teaching almost as much as you're training, maybe a little less, especially if you're trying to focus more on competition, but that's where you're going to make a lot of money. I think Tom DeBlas was the first person I ever heard talk about actually making money in jiu-jitsu. He's like, man, as a competitor, most of you guys, you're not Gordon Ryan. You're not Craig Jones. You're not these guys who can compete and might make money off competing. Like, you're going to end up having to teach probably if you want to make any kind of money in the sport. So,
yeah. Well, look how many of those guys that are high-level competitors and they're broke. You know?
Absolutely.
There are
plenty of them out
there. Sure, they're
there.
making money on like DVD sales or seminars or something, but the second that they like fall off of the competition circuit, the chances of them making income from jiu-jitsu are almost zero.
Right, because they don't have like, most of those guys are like traveling around. Like their hustle is traveling around doing seminars, doing privates, but they don't have any like students, as opposed to like here where this is where we train at. We're here all the time. Like you and me and the other coaches, we're here all the time. We're willing and honestly very happy to come in and help everybody get better. And I feel like a lot of these people, they go and teach, they do it for the money, and then they just like dip out,
Yeah, I've had an instructor that worked for me before. This is a long time ago, that would pull up, sit in the car, wait until like 2 minutes before class, get out of the car wearing the gi, come in, teach the class, not train with anybody. As soon as the class time is over, boom, back in the car and out. And that, like as an instructor, part of your job is to connect with the people that you're teaching.
Absolutely.
If somebody comes in here and they feel like you don't care about them at all, I don't care how good you are at jiu-jitsu, people are not going to want to stay around you. I mean, we know highest level guys treat people like trash. People leave.
Yeah.
The best competitors, the best students leave because they don't want to be there. It's
right.
There's got to be some give and take there. Obviously, as like a business owner, you have to be willing to kind of like put yourself out there, but not so much that you're giving too much of yourself.
Right.
And there's a fine line between that. And, me personally, I'll come in, I'll teach a class, and then sometimes I want to get out of here. Well, there's like 3 or 4 people in a row that need to talk to me or something, you know? So you have to be okay with that, you know? And some days it's hard to do that. You know, I may have things going on myself.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
But that's part of business owner, you know? And now that we're having this second location open up soon, you know, we'll be more separated where, you know, we'll still be a tight team, but for sure we're not going to be together every day like we were, you know. And that's just reality of life, you know. Like the longer you train in jiu-jitsu or the longer you do anything really, you understand that like at some point people have their time together and then they have to go and either be their own leader or have their own new set of issues and challenges, you know.
For sure. And it's like a cell that gets too big, you know. It starts to split and you don't get small or like, you know, one cell is bigger than the other one. It always splits even, you know, and then eventually you guys come back. You can always come back together and it's still going to be all good, you know, like, and it's not like you spend like a month without training with each other.
Sure.
You know, there'll be a lot of back and forth for sure. But yeah, I know there's going to always be those people who like can only train here and then can only train at the other spot. So I'm excited. I'm really excited.
As we grow and open more locations, it'll just be more people. And, you know, I think, but it's important as a team and as a leader of a team to make sure that there's never a time where there's that separation, you know, where any one place feels like they're better than the other one. And sometimes I've seen with team leaders, they kind of forget that, you know.
For sure.
I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
They get to this point where they feel like, you know, they don't owe anybody anything, so they don't pour into them as much as they used to, right? And that automatically puts a separation.
Yeah,
and it's got to be important to, you know, do team events and make sure that the connection is there. You know, I mean, like we do our coaches meetings regularly, you know, coaches dinners, breakfast, that kind of stuff is important as team building, you know, but you also have to do that for the students that train there as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So on a March 1st is like going to be the soft opening. You know, we're finally getting J-Flow in here, Justin Flores.
Oh, yeah. J-Flowing.
You know, he's been a coach to several high-level MMA athletes, but also the judo coach for the USA team, D1 wrestler.
Stud.
I haven't ever trained with him, but I've seen a lot of his videos online for years. And we had the opportunity to bring him in, I think it's actually today, but it just didn't work out because of timing or whatever. But yeah, so that'll be like our first real seminar in our new spot.
That's going to be sick, man. I've seen his videos. I've never gotten the chance to train with him personally just because he lives in California and I live in Texas. So there's already an issue there because I do not want to go to California. But
where
I would definitely go to train with him.
Out of all the places to go to in California, San Diego is probably going to be the best. You know, it's what you're thinking of, like not wanting to go to, is going to be LA. And
linked up.
Sure, LA is horrible, and it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. But at the same time, it's horrible, man. And God bless anybody that wants to live there. But San Diego is a little bit different. You know, a lot of military there. So it's a little bit cleaner. Although I did see some video today in La Jolla, like some guys coming from, I don't know where they were from, but they were on a boat and they were like 100% speed onto the shore and then running from the police. So I'm assuming they were some kind of people crossing the border.
Some kind of immigrants, yeah.
And you know, right across from San Diego is Tijuana. So
yeah, you know their visa is expired. That's what they're going to tell you. So my visa expired.
Yeah. So I guess we got trials coming up. You know, that's the next big thing for you, right? Like the next competition.
West Coast trials for sure. Yeah. Doing minus 77 again because those minus 88 guys, y'all are gigantic. So, and that's the thing with the 80cc weight classes is like, there's such a huge gap. 66 and 77, that's a gigantic gap. Like, if you think about UFC weight classes, you have 145, 155, and then it's welterweight, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so some good jumps there, but at least there's a 155, right? This goes from like so what's minus 66? Like 140 something?
I think it's 146 or 147, something like that.
And then to 169.
Yeah.
Like almost 170. Like, so it's pretty much like lightweight wouldn't exist in the UFC if those were like the weight classes.
Yeah.
It would be featherweight and then welterweight.
But I feel like if, let's say, okay, hypothetically, ADCC adds more weight classes. You and I have both been to trials, and it is a long event. Like normally by day 2, if nobody has made it to day 2, I go for a couple matches in the morning, and then I watch the rest of it from the hotel because it's a long event. I mean, Worlds is even longer. It's a smaller tournament, but they stretch it out because of so many things that they're doing, you know, show wise and
showcasing.
I feel like if they did extra weight classes, either one, you're gonna have to get a giant venue, like a Las Vegas venue where they have Master Worlds, or you're gonna have to have the event in a couple of different weekends or extend it to 3 to 4 days.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the guys who, I think adding more weight classes or switching up the weight classes, like the guys who are kind of in between on the weights, I think would fit into those. So you might get a more like stretched out, you know, like guys who would normally be 77, but on like the low end or pretty much their like natural walking around weight. They cut a little bit of weight. They go down to like the next lowest weight class and they compete there. So you might get it more stretched out, but yeah, that is true. You could attract more competitors that way.
What is it? 300 competitors in a division sometimes? And
yes, I think the max is 270 something, which is what it was for East Coast trials. And I'm sure, I mean, it's already almost sold out. Like, you let me know. He was like, hey, it's almost sold out. I'm like, all right, let's go.
Certain divisions will fill up faster than others, you know.
Minus 77 fills up like
normally
that.
77, 88, and then a lot of guys have that problem of making 66, you know. And
yeah, 66 is slower to fill up.
And the minus 99, you know, is like, I don't know if that one's ever filled up. I definitely know the plus 99 is never filled up.
Never.
But, you know, definitely those in between weights that more people either have the natural walking around weight or the drive or ability to cut to those weight classes. That's where you see it fill up first. And it's really the same kind of way with, you know, you look at any IBJJF. Obviously, there's way more weight classes with them, but a lot of those weight classes will, you know, 64 people or whatever their like maximum number of people is in some of those divisions. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I know that
that's like the most I've ever seen.
Some of those middle,
like 60s.
There'll be like 4 different brackets, right?
Yeah.
And those middle weight classes are the ones that fill up the fastest.
Yep, right where I'm at.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was not born 6'6" and 200 plus pounds. I'm right there in the middle.
Yeah.
I'm not like Jared. He's like what, 6'9"? I want to say he's like 6'8". But anytime we go to these tournaments, and Big Dan and Luke Griffith have both been like looking up at him. They're like, "What?"
Yeah,
this
he just
kid
needs,
is
and he's
so
young
tall.
too. The guy needs to. I would say, you know, and I have said this to him. You need to take your weight training and your stretching and your food intake serious, and that's
you're so physically gifted. But the thing is you have that length and that height, and if you like neglect stretching or like mobility or strength training, like gravity's gonna like pull you down, you know, like with taller guys, you see they like kind of end up getting hunched over like this because their muscles aren't strong enough to pull their spine into alignment.
Well, and you think about how many doorways he has to duck under. So like naturally your body starts to like want to go down.
Right.
But I have seen, you know, we had a guy come back that they actually started training together at another gym, and they came here, and the guy's gone for, I don't know, 6 months or something. And I was watching the training this week, and Jared is like mopping the floor with this dude. You know, like every time they're in a positional exchange, Jared ends up in the better position. And I think that's that's a great thing for him. I don't even know if he recognized that. I know as a beginner, sometimes that's difficult to do, but
For sure.
I've had conversations with him where he feels like he's not getting better, and that's every person. But I can promise you the reason you don't feel like you're getting better, there's only two reasons for that. One is because you're either not showing up in training, and the second one is you're showing up in training, but so is everybody else. You know,
Yeah.
like every
exactly.
every time somebody sees you get a promotion, or you catch a submission, or you hit a sweep on somebody, that person registers that, and they're like, okay, I'm about to dial my game up. So automatically you start to feel like, man, I'm like not progressing. Like, no, you are, but everybody else is too.
Yeah, everybody else who's showing up with a goal in mind for training is going to end up getting better, you know? Like, especially the people you see all the time. And then, like you were saying, the people who come in, maybe you guys started at the same time, but they take a couple months off, but you've been in here consistent like Jared has been, and he's just now dominating like in every exchange, you know, in that very short period of time makes a huge difference. Like sometimes when you come in and you train so much, like time just kind of flies by, you know. I don't even realize I'm here at the gym for a couple hours and I'm like, man, it didn't even feel like it.
Yeah.
Like I'm ready to do it again tomorrow type of deal. So yeah, and then once you like get into that flow state, and also it's, you know, after training for a while, you kind of get into that flow of training. Like you kind of understand how to train, and you come in with certain goals, and it just feels effortless at a certain point, you know.
But the guy that doesn't set those goals or doesn't understand that will always be like, man, everybody is so much better than me.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you have to set that goal, like what we were talking about earlier. Have to set a goal in training, whether it's you're the guy that's, you know, let's say you're rolling with somebody that's 100 pounds lighter than you and a beginner. Hey, this whole roll, all I'm working on is my arm bars or whatever. If you're rolling up with somebody that's way bigger than you, more skilled than you, the whole goal should be, okay, don't get tapped, or don't get tapped multiple times, right?
Right.
And you can
Try to
that goal
fight
can,
back.
Sure. That goal can be modified in the moment, you know?
Yeah,
like let's
absolutely.
say my whole goal is like, if I'm rolling with somebody more skilled than me, if I'm like, okay, my goal is don't get swept. Then they sweep you. Okay, my goal is don't get caught in that sweep again, you know? And I feel like even setting that mental goal in the middle of the round will help you from being discouraged.
Yeah,
Because
for sure.
I know I've trained with many people, and you do something to them, and you know, some people don't make it audible, you know, but it's clear when you do something that you just like defeated them mentally, you know, and they're already quitting. And for me, I don't know if I've ever like exhibited that. I don't feel like anytime I train with you, it's ever been that way.
Right.
And I don't know if, you know, that's just how I am, or I don't remember like ever developing that particular skill of like not getting discouraged during training. But I've never really felt like, you know, somebody does something to me like, okay, fuck, you got me, you know, like, let's go back. We'll do it again.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's just training, right? That's kind of like the whole point, right? Is to expose those own holes in your game and, you know, experiment and try stuff out and fail a bunch of times. Sometimes I'll show a technique that's a little more advanced, you know, takes a little more time to set up or whatnot, requires a little more control. I go, look, if you invest in this, meaning you try these moves out in training and you keep mess them up over and over and over again, because each time you mess it up, you should be ideally correcting that mistake for the next time. Mm-hmm. So then it just gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And then over time, that might end up being a staple in your game, where I know like close guard armbar, when I first started training when I was real young, was really hard for me to grasp for some reason. But then once I understood the mechanics behind it, like, okay, I got to really get the angle, really get perpendicular with the body, throw the leg over, stay tight. Once I got reps of that and I started to catch it more often, I was like, okay, I think I can really make this part of my game.
Yeah.
So don't get discouraged if you, oh man, I'm trying this triangle, but I just can't get it. Okay, well, if you did everything correctly, the person should be tapping, right? So if you lock up a triangle and you don't get the tap, you messed up somewhere in there. So finding those mistakes and correcting those, this is also how you get better a lot faster, for sure.
Well, I think that's a good note to end on.
Absolutely.
We like covered quite a bit of stuff on this podcast. If you like what you're hearing and you want to support us, we now have a Amazon shop, so you can see the products that we like to use. You can also use that shop link to shop yourself. You don't even have to buy the products that we're putting. Just use that link. It'll help support the podcast. It helps us pay for things. It'll help us improve our production quality. And we're doing this for you guys. So we'd appreciate it if you help us out. You can also find us here at Corvo Martial Arts. My Instagram is at Uncle Tony BJJ. Yours is
at D Ramos BJJ. All one. Don't add in the underscore. After D, you will get a different D Ramos. You'll get Damon Ramos. D Ramos BJJ, all one.
So there's a couple different ways you can support us there. If you like what you're hearing, make sure you like and subscribe on all platforms that have our podcast. Thank you, guys. We appreciate it.
And that's a wrap for today's Kings of Kimuras episode. Thanks for joining us on this epic journey. Remember to keep training, stay curious, and always be ready for the next adventure. Until next time, keep your guards up and your minds open.